Let's start the show.
All righty.
We're going to be talking about trusting our instincts, or challenging our instincts, should I say.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to pose this question, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. The question is, I'm looking at divorce. I'm looking at domestic violence in relationships. And I'm going to ask you, brothers, what do you believe the greatest contributor to all of this action taking place today? What constitute? Where did it come from? What all this?
I think most of it is environment. Really, if you look at the environment that most of the men who are a part of domestic violence, domestic abuse with their significant other, I think most of that is learned behavior. It's something that they saw growing up, something that they experienced maybe. And it was a way that they were taught how you would express love in a sense. Thankfully, that wasn't anything that wasn't my experience. That wasn't something that was normal for me. But if you grow up in an environment where you are experiencing your mother being abused, your grandmother, or whatever individual that's in your environment, they're going through this abuse, but immediately following, you hear I love you, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done this had you not, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is one of the biggest proponents, as well as divorce. You have a lot of individuals who they experience people in their family who may not have had healthy relationships, or they've never experienced what a healthy marriage looks like. They've only experienced broken homes or family members who have gone through one or multiple divorces, so they don't understand what the work is that is necessary to sustain a healthy relationship or healthy marriage. And also, individuals who are in a healthy marriage don't always tell those individuals who are entering one what the work is.
Okay, so that's what we're doing today on the Love and Victory Show.
Yeah. So I think it's environment.
We want to inspire someone and help someone be able to continue in that healthy relationship. We have another perspective.
We got tons.
Just an open mic. What you got, Rick?
I got tons of them, only because I've been in both. I'm not gonna lie. I'm very open and transparent. Y'all probably know that. I've been in abusive relationships, physically and emotionally. I've been divorced twice now. I had to look up and think about it. I've been divorced twice, so I understand. My dad was divorced 5 times and remarried 5 times.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and my mom is not as many times, but multiple relationships, right? So you're 100% correct. The environment, the thing that you're around, like you for some reason, it just sticks to you in your program. I have this thing where I talk about
don't
the phases.
mean you have to be tore up from the floor up.
Absolutely not. No, it doesn't mean that. But here's the thing. This one thing when I come to mindset coaching is understanding people's habits and understand why you're doing the things that you're doing, right? Because you have certain phases in life. You know what I'm saying? From 0 to 7, you're just developing. You're just developing, you're absorbing everything.
Right.
From 7 to 13, you kind of acting it out. From 13 to 20, that's just who you are, right? And unless you start doing the work when you get in your 20s, that's just literally who you are. And then what the problem is, most people is they're not honest enough with themselves for me to communicate, this is my problem. So let's go ahead and get married. And now all my problems are coming out.
Right.
But I never done the work to get myself fixed. And here I am abusing you. I wasn't abusing.
We're going to get into that also, talking about that vulnerability spot that we need to get
It has a lot to do with the mindset and the habits that you picked up that you have not facilitated and started to get fixed. And so you get into relationships and you're trying to fix it, and you're trying to get with a person who hasn't fixed themselves. So both of y'all jacked up.
Wow.
And then now you got multiple problems.
Yeah. So Steve, what you think on this conversation here?
I think they've hit on it a lot. I think it really comes from your history, and if you don't work that out going into it, it's just going to keep boiling until you actually take care of it. I don't think there's enough people these days getting the help that they need, like therapy, whether it be couples counseling or this and that, the other, because sometimes people feel like, I don't need the help. Well, actually, you do. There's a reason why we have people like this, to help us. So it's being brave enough to actually go seek the help that you need.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's good. That's good. And Robert, what you have there, Rev, on that particular subject?
Well, first and foremost, I just want to say that I love the topic itself, challenging our instincts. And as men, we have to do that, because we all have natural emotions that we have, but unchecked emotions, especially for men, can be a dangerous thing. So I would just say that we have to challenge what we deem to be normal, what we deem to be acceptable, what we deem to be okay. Even those emotions of anger or frustration, how do we display that? So I would just say that in psychology, there's this phrase, not a phrase, but there's this great debates going on for up to years about nature versus nurture, right? And nature is basically your DNA, your biology, how you were created, what you passed on to your children, what's inside of you, what makes you you. And then, but also nurture is your environment. And so these are the two things that are pulling for our attention that makes us usually how we operate and what we do. And so I would just say that we're not defined by those alone.
Right,
and I think as men, we have to be aware of that we're not just defined by our biology or by DNA or by what my dad did, or my genes, or not, or even my environment, right? We can't control that.
You can very easily become a part of all of those environments and things of that nature as well.
And you're just born into it.
Right.
And so the idea is, what can we control? We can't control DNA. We can't control our environment a lot of times. And so we have to, as men, we have to check ourselves and control what we can't control. And so you're talking about the idea of divorce or abuse. Those are things that we can make a decision on and choose. The topic is challenging our instincts. And one of the reasons why I love it so much is because as human beings, we have this distinct pleasure and blessing of being able to make decisions, and no other animal, no other species can do that, right? So we've been made in the image of God. Like, we can make decisions and choices.
You have the power to
we
do
have the
that.
power to do. You're not defined by your environment. So I love that.
Yes, just because my daddy was this or that don't mean that I have to be that. Right. So I want to ask you just one more question on that same subject, though. As far as what contribute, we know as an individual we have problems, but in a relationship there's another
layer, really,
right, that takes place. And I might want to ask you guys: is it something that money might be a problem? The lack of communication could be a problem. The lack of sexual contact can be a problem. All these things can contribute. And my question is, what do you think, based on your own instinct, could be the number one factor, should I say, of divorce and domestic violence in a relationship?
So what I always say, one of the largest reasons for divorce in today's culture and climate,
yes, sir,
is because people are getting married for the wrong reasons.
Facts.
And the fundamental foundation of their marriage is not sound. You're getting married with someone because they make you feel good, like they have a lot of money, they make you feel secure. All those things are nice and great, but at some point in time, those things are going to change.
Right.
And
what do you do at that point?
Right. So if your foundation isn't secure, at some point in time, it's going to be a lot easier to leave than it is to do the work.
Right. Facts.
So I think that's one of the reasons why divorce is so high. And because we have created this sense of independence on both sides, men and women, it's easier. I can do bad all by myself. I would much rather be alone and know that it's all up to me than to place my faith in someone else who could let me down, who could hurt me, who could lie, who could do all these other things. And I can just do that by myself. So again, the foundation is not on solid ground. And when it's not, that's where you have increased rates of divorce, where people look at divorce as an out in a sense, rather than really, because divorce is an option in every marriage that you have. We like to say in the Christian faith, divorce is not an option. No, it is. But the simple fact that I am choosing to stay with you and be with you and do the work with you every day should speak volumes to what I and how I perceive this relationship.
Okay. Now, do you think, I'm going to ask you this, Rickey, do you believe, when you go into a relationship, well, I'm going on the sexual intercourse thing right now. So it started off real nice and dandy when you start your relationship.
Fire and desire.
And so somewhere down the road, things start, you know, especially when you're married to professional women that are career driven. You know, I think this happened most in those relationships. Do you think there's a grounds for divorce too?
Because you ain't getting sex.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
and y'all hear, they cut my mic off. Why is my mic off?
That's funny.
You know, I just got to be honest. Again, I'm only.
Yeah.
I always say this. I'm only good at what I say and do because I've been through it. You know, classes and stuff like that helps and different things. But I've just experienced enough stuff to talk about it comfortably, right? So my second divorce was because we wasn't having sex, right? But sex is just one thing. That's just one part of the marriage. That's one part of everything. It's not everything, obviously. I always go back to self-awareness, right? If you don't know yourself enough to explain yourself to a person, you're going to have a problem at some point in time, right? So it's always going to be good in the beginning. It's like, yeah, we good, because you got those endorphins going, dopamine, everything's fired up. You know what I'm saying? You like, and she's like, ooh, and then it's like, ah. But then after a couple of months,
that quick, just
that quick, literally,
And that's all.
and we're done. But
And the woman be over there like, you know, I ain't really got time for this.
You know? And so what happens in the beginning, and you know, it's the same thing like we're working out. I talk about it. I always say fitness is literally life. Because in the beginning, you're all excited. You're like, I'm going to the gym every single day. But man, that second week, matter of fact, the second day, sometime you don't feel like doing it no more. And that's where willpower comes in, and that's where your goals come in, and that's when you decide that I'm in this relationship for this particular reason. So even though I don't feel like having sex with you, let's talk about it. Let's really understand. I may just be tired. Yeah, maybe it ain't going right now. You know what I'm saying? I had a stressful day at work. My testosterone is low, so all that stuff kicks in. And instead of being honest and saying, "This is how I feel," I can't perform. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
You must
I don't
have been with somebody else before you came home.
Yeah.
Okay,
you know what I mean? So that's the problem.
so from a woman's perspective on that, sometimes women have that same challenge.
Right.
And so you said, yes, it is, or in some cases you would say, it's about
in the
divorce.
case, yeah.
Okay. I would like to say, take it another way. Sometimes we just have to respect where that person is at in that moment. That doesn't mean that some moments last longer than others.
Yeah.
But if you love someone, you kind of really, it has to be more than sex. Because we all are going to get old one day.
And within marriage, because I'm assuming
And that's what
the
we
context
base it. This context is about the marriage.
So within marriage, you can't make decisions off of a moment.
Right.
So that's another challenge. That most of the individuals that are married in today's culture and climate have to deal with.
Yes.
To Ricky's point, if this is a continuous situation and we just have not had the conversation or we're refusing to have the conversation, that's a little different. Right. But what I think the difference between men and women a lot of time is how we are preparing for sex. Women, I believe, are more, they need to be stimulated mentally a little bit more. Right. Whereas men are probably more visual with our stimulation.
Neanderthal, like.
Yeah. and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just we have to understand and find ways to meet in the middle. I had the pleasure of sitting with some men before a good friend of mine got married. It was about 12 to 15 of us, and all of them had been married in various stages of their life, and we were just pouring into him as he was preparing to get married. And that was some of the things that we talked about, just the how sex is going to be fun, fiery, frequent in the beginning of
and you know this
marriage.
Is something that we really don't talk about.
We don't.
Men.
Right.
We don't. And that's what I was saying earlier. This is the work that we don't really discuss when we talk about marriage is work. So one of the things that I stress to him is, when the fun, frequency, and all that stuff, kind of the fire fades away, you have to resort to different ways to stimulate your significant other. Whether it is through text messages throughout the day, whether it is through like understanding, like, I know my wife. We've been best friends for going on 20 years. I know if my wife is away at work if she comes home to flowers, because she loves flowers, if she comes home to a clean house, if she comes home to our son being taken, like,
That's everything.
let's go.
That's everything. Yeah.
Send Maxwell to bed early.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And likewise, she understands the cues for me. But again, that has to be something that is
That
stimulated
relationship, man. Yeah.
collectively.
Yeah.
Right. We've had those conversations.
And I think that what you're saying there is very key in any relationship on both sides. But since we're talking about, you guys are discussing sex and intimacy in the
Right.
bedroom, we're talking to those that are married and hopefully those that are either looking to be into a committed relationship. So there is no way that we're advocating just go out
Well,
there.
yeah,
and
yeah.
Okay. But
I think what-
So
go
you
ahead.
got in some, Robert?
Yeah, I was want to piggyback on what AD was talking about, and I think what AD was saying was that in a relationship, in a marriage context, that you can't be selfish.
Okay.
You know, you can't be selfish, and I think a lot of times people go into their way of thinking. They're going to this marriage thinking about how can I please myself.
Myself.
You know, what
Yes,
can I
that's
get
good.
from
Right,
this?
right.
You know,
That's good.
especially early on, you know, in a relationship, you sign up because I get to have this, I get to do this, I get to
Right.
do this. It's gonna be so much fun. And I think one of the differences in men and boys is that a boy will sign up for something because of what they can get, and a man has taken the time to develop himself, and now he has something to give.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm just
Yeah.
not focusing on what I can
Right.
get, but
Yeah.
I'm focusing on what I can give and how I can be a servant to
But that
somebody
only
else.
only take place if you take the time
Yeah.
to become a man.
Exactly.
You know, because there are many old guys out there that are still boys.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
real
so
good. Yeah, that's real good.
you do have to take some time. You do have to work at becoming a man. And I personally believe the only way you can truly become a real man is spiritually.
Yeah.
You have to spiritually grow to be a real man. Without that spiritual growth, I think you remain as that your own person, and that own person is that one you was talking about earlier, the combination of the 3 to 7 year old and the teenager. You become that individual,
you are.
and you never come out of that individual. You remain that combination of an individual.
Stuck in puberty forever.
Yeah, am I
Puberty
making
phase.
sense?
Yes.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
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 All right, Steven, how you feel about vulnerability?
Vulnerability.
Yes, and being able to express
Right.
your emotions.
Right. Well, what I was hearing about across the board from all y'all's
Oh, you
commentary.
want to piggyback on that first?
Well, yes, but it actually leads into the vulnerability. So
Okay.
it was a good segue.
Yeah.
So the thing about it is, I keep hearing communication throughout this. You know, having a conversation about
Yeah.
rather than just assume what the other person needs, or being communicating what your self needs are. You know, sometimes we're just assuming that the other person actually knows what your needs are, and that we haven't actually thought, oh well, maybe I haven't actually communicated what those feelings are. Well, the underlying thing with the vulnerability is communicating your vulnerability.
Right.
You know, I think too many times, especially in a culture where men have to be men, people are, people hold in your feelings rather than communicate them. And so you have a whole bunch of pent up, feelings that are that
You just don't know how to express it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't allow you to grow. Once you start communicating that, and you grow more.
I guess that's where all the domestic violence and all this stuff come from not
Correct.
being able to
Can't express yourself.
express the vulnerable parts of yourself.
Correct.
What you got there, right?
No, I was just saying, I think as men, we have to start trusting our partners, right? And because if they've created an environment to where they're trustworthy, they're your safe place, you know what I mean? And so then there's no reason for you not to feel like you can't be vulnerable with this person, especially if it's going to further the relationship, right? If you're not communicating your feelings, you're not communicating how you truly feel, then that's going to damage the relationship. But if this person is a person that's proven that they're trustworthy, they've got your back, they care about your well-being, then you can share things with this person that you may not share with anyone else.
Right.
To help further and advance this relationship. A lot of times as men, we think that that's a weakness. I can't share anything with her.
Right.
You know,
That's really that's how it's been framed, though.
Yeah.
When you think about it, when you were growing up, most of the time as a young child, you were told not to cry. You were told not to express yourself in a way that was feminine in a sense, and that carries over into our adulthood. So whether it is trust issues or just not believing that your partner is going to be a good steward of whatever information you decide to share with them, that's something that goes back to, again, the work that we have to do individually, whether it's, talking to ourselves or really reframing the mindset that we have when it comes to how we are going to communicate and how we should communicate with our significant other. But it's really hard to do if you've never experienced or seen that.
I agree with you, but I think if I would take it a step further. A lot of times you guys, from what sitting on this side, men kind of work off of your instincts, and you guys are working off of something.
That's what we're talking about, instincts
right, but
today.
something that you've been told, even trying to control the relationships with things that you really haven't really opened yourself up to understand, because you're working off of what you've seen or what someone else have told. So when, like you said, when being vulnerable, it's not something that you guys have been taught to do. So you bring that baggage into the relationship, and sometimes it's hard for you guys to hear your mate and what they are feeling, because you're still caught up on.
Right.
Well, I believe the problem stems back to Adam and Eve when they were in the garden naked, and when they bit of the forbidden fruit, they realized they were naked, and they tried to cover themselves. And I think too often our insecurities, I'm going somewhere with this, our insecurities start to show up periodically because of the forbidden fruit that was being eaten by Adam way back in the day. And so we have to get to a place, I believe, where we are being comfortable with who we are as individuals, stop as men. We're so competitive and comparative, should I say. Competitive and comparative.
Okay, comparative.
And yes. We need to stop comparing ourselves to other men, because I may not be 6'2" like Robert. And I have to accept my own 6 foot. Or 5'11" or whatever I might be now, but that's who God made me, and and when you can accept who God made as an individual, man, it's no limits to, I believe, what we can do as men.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Let me share this with you, because this is something that everybody was saying, and when you brought it home with the Adam and Eve story, right? You saying that sometimes the woman, we have to trust our partner, right? And I believe that. Again, I'm talking from experience, stuff I've been through, right? I've gotten to a place to where the situation was right. Okay, the situation could be perfect, but if the person isn't ready to receive the perfect situation, they're going to mess it up regardless. You know what I'm saying? Adam and Eve. Let's go with that story, right? It was a perfect situation, right? It's a perfect situation. It was a perfect situation.
Right.
Here's the part that messed everything up, and that concept is applicable to every situation, right? Once you become knowledgeable of who you are, if you're not willing to accept it, you're going to be afraid and you're going to sabotage it.
Oh, man.
You think about it. If you get in a perfect relationship with a perfect woman, if you don't know who you are, you're going to sabotage it. You're going to mess it up because you're so afraid of what you discovered, the things that are possibly going to happen. It's like, oh my, this is unfamiliar territory. I'm about to mess this whole thing up. So that's what most people do in relationships, men and women. You get the perfect mate, the perfect person, but you're not ready to receive it. You're not knowledgeable enough of yourself to know how to apply this new knowledge. So what do? You cover yourself up, you run, you sabotage it. You know what I'm saying? So that's what the thing I always keep saying over and over and over. you have to know yourself before you get in any situation. Because I can explain in detail who I am per myself, my experiences. And now in this situation, I can be applicable. I can be present. I can work together to make this beautiful paradise an actual paradise. I can live in it. You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing. You got to know yourself, man.
Yeah. And know yourself and trust yourself. AD, what you got for us over there? I see you sitting over there.
Well, no, I mean,
you just got something that you got on your mind right now.
It is. When Robert brought up the nature versus nurture concept, I've always been a nurture person because I think that you can. There are things that are going to be, of course, ingrained in your DNA, but I also believe that if you are exposed to different things, or you are placed in an environment that is outside of your norm, it opens the possibilities for you. So when we talk about healthy marriages, if you are born from individuals who have had multiple divorces or whatever, and then you are placed inside of the Cosby household, where you see a father who loves his wife, when you see a wife who loves her husband, and how they are expressing that love, it is just, to me, I think that it opens the door for you to see that, one, this is possible, two, this is somewhat of a framework of how you can get this as well.
And something I noticed about that with talking about the Cosbys there, many relationships don't know how to express that love in the presence of their children. You know what I'm saying?
And it's very crucial to do that.
Right. I even found it difficult for myself at one point in my life. The children right there.
Right.
Back because my warped thinking was all messed up at the time. Because I'm thinking the kiss leads to going on to doing something else. Instead of it just being a kiss, an affection. Because like we all say, we was all once young and thought youthfully. Yes.
Every kiss leads to doing the next.
Right. And so I want to move this forward a little bit to older marriages, and we don't know the difference with women. Women go through a lot of changes.
My God.
I say.
Menopause and all that other stuff.
They go through a lot of changes.
Y'all go through a change every month.
And
It's a different person every month.
And so I want to ask you, gentlemen, how do you withstand in the midst of the changes that take place? Because when those changes come place, you're dealing with a lot of different things. You're dealing with the hollering and screaming sometimes. You're dealing with I don't want to do it sometimes, And
honest we get.
And you're dealing with all of these different things. How do you stand in the midst of that, Robert?
Well, I would say, going back to earlier about checking your emotions, and I think as men, when you don't check your emotions, it can be a dangerous thing. The reason for that is because your presence, your presence, your voice, all of that is communicating that this is not a safe place. If you don't check your emotions, if you don't know how to govern yourself, and so when you talk about going back and forth, like you're in a relationship, and I was having a discussion a little while ago, maybe about a year or so ago, and we were talking about how the Bible talks about husbands, you ought to love your wives, and love them unconditionally, right? And then how that the wives should respect or submit to their husbands.
Their own husband.
Their own husband. Their own husband. Not somebody else's husband. And so this person was saying to me that that seems so difficult, that it's not the woman has the blunt of the responsibility to submit and to respect this man and stuff like that. And I said, well, that's one way to look at it. I said, I think both parties have a challenge because both parties are trying to be refined and to look more and more like Christ. And so when I shared with her was that, I'm not familiar with the woman's side because I'm not a woman, and the responsibility that you have. I said, but as a man, that can be challenging. Not that I don't love my wife. I don't think my wife is gorgeous. I want to be around her, or we're not friends. But the ability to be able to be that rock, to be unwavering, to not treat you based on how I feel at the moment, to not be so emotional, but to be solid in my and how the way I communicate my love towards you, and so where you never doubt that, and so that's not an easy thing to do, because now I have to be able to be confident in myself enough, confident in God, confident in the relationship.
Yourself.
I have to deny myself, and to be able to know that even though you may be kind of
going up and down
right now, I can't go there with you right now. I have to still love you in a way to where I'm leading you and showing how we should go. And I think a lot of times as men, what I've learned is that in my short period of living,
short term,
is that when we as men move a certain way, and we operate a certain way with our significant other, they'll begin to pick up on how we have led the relationship. So if that is anger and hostility or a stern look or whatever it may be, it'll be reciprocated. And so now you're trying to figure out what happened to my wife that was so nice and loving and sweet and kind all the time.
And she's saying, what happened to you?
What happened to you?
But to piggyback on what you was talking about women having the bulk of responsibilities. We have the same responsibility as Christian men.
Yeah, that's what I was communicating.
I think we have more.
No, because we are now the woman, the wife, the bride.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, let me dress this up here. I got to put some clothes on it here
because it's naked.
And we don't want you to be left out there naked.
But I'm talking to Rev here, and he gonna see what I'm talking about. Where it talks about something in the Bible about Jesus being the bride, and you have the bride's groom,
right?
Bride, something like that. But anyway, we have those same responsibilities as men under Christ as a woman have under us. You know what I'm saying? Which makes it us all equal, so to speak.
Okay, I'm supposed to jump on
You
that.
have to submit to Christ before you can actually lead.
The Bible tells the man just to love his wife, right? And tells the wife to submit to the husband.
But you're missing a very important part
Come
of
on
that
now,
scripture.
there you go.
Help me then.
So,
yes.
And this is why I believe that there's more accountability and more pressure, in a sense, that is given to the husband, because you are correct. The husband should love their wife as Christ loved the church. And so what did Christ do for the church? He came when he didn't have to. He died when he didn't have to. He sacrificed when he didn't have to. And he continuously loves after the church has done God knows what. So
still doing God knows what.
Right. And he did all those things knowing that the church would still sometimes not choose him, go against his word, be contrary to whatever it is that he has proposed. Like all of those things, yet and still, Christ still loved the church, and he sacrificed continuously for that. So if we go back to the Adam and Eve analogy that we used earlier, Adam was given all of the guidelines, the structure, the rubric, in a sense, to follow from God himself.
Right.
Eve didn't get that rubric.
She did
from
not.
God. She got that from her husband. However, Adam chose to divvy that out.
Whatever he left out or didn't,
that's on Adam.
That's on Adam.
Now, when
I like that, AD. I like that.
Yeah, I'm not a preacher of the word. I like to teach and break things down. So when you look at even when Adam and Eve fell, the serpent didn't go to Adam because he knew that Adam had continuously walked with God, and he had been in the presence different than what Eve had been.
There you go.
So he went to Eve, not saying that Eve was lesser or weaker in a sense. It's just where Adam had received the word in stereo, Eve only received it in a mono version.
There you go. Come on now.
So
Come on,
I like
now.
that plug, by the way.
Come on, come on.
So
You don't know, but you preaching right now.
and even still, what the serpent he didn't lie to Eve, but he didn't tell the whole truth.
Right.
And that's what they do.
Right. So again, when they fell, who did God call?
Adam.
He called Adam.
That's right.
He didn't say, "Hey y'all, where y'all
no,
at?"
he did not.
He said, "Adam."
He was very clear.
Very clear, as he is, my God, all the time. He called for Adam because he had given the
charge
instruction,
to Adam.
the authority, the dominion, all that. He gave that to his initial creation. And after he had given that to his initial creation, he realized that this is a little bit too much for you.
him.
Let me bring someone else who can be a helper in what
But
I
he
have given you.
expected him, Adam, to
100%.
pass that charge. I mean, to teach, to pass it on to his significant other, his family.
He expected his initial creation, Adam, to be a pastor in a
Yes.
sense to Eve.
Yes.
To
Communicator.
yes.
Yes, very
Yes.
good. Exactly.
And that wasn't the case.
Right.
So I think when it comes in today's era, unfortunately, the pendulum has shifted to where we have so many women, and we talked about this before, who are becoming more independent. And it's not necessarily by choice.
Right.
A lot of it is because we have a lot of men who have not.
Forsaking their responsibility.
There
Yes,
you go.
that's it right there.
And because of that, you have a lot of women who, well, look, bruh, if you're not gonna do it,
What's going to happen?
it ain't gonna. Okay, it's
I
got to
gotta
get
go
done.
get. I gotta get it done.
So I
Yeah.
got to go get it, and then we go back to I can do bad all by myself. So it's just a cycle, in a sense. If we don't have brothers who can continuously step up and challenge the instincts that they have, in a sense, then we will be in a situation to where we're going to consistently have broken homes. We're going to have in situations of domestic violence. We're going to have children who are being raised without parents, without fathers, you name it.
Yeah.
But it all goes back to the Adam following
The instructions.
the instruction that was given to him.
And,
Let me-
Well
I
said.
gotta drop
Well
something.
said.
and I
Go ahead.
love the fact, and
Go
I'm
ahead.
going to let you
Go
go
ahead.
there too. I love the fact that what you guys just said, what you just said there, is communication.
Communication.
You have to communicate what's happening versus just holding it in and understand your role. You know, when you take on a wife.
'Cause I feel like Adam did. I feel like he was just, man, look,
But here's that's what I
she
wanted to
bad.
go.
She
Yeah.
bad.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
one thing that was in this, because we always get on Adam.
Yeah.
I say we always get on Adam for bite the apple. But you have to think of this is broken down to me when I first started the ministry. You can't blame Adam because Eve is the original. Every fine being that we have seen since is nothing but a carbon copy. What happens with the copy when you make? At some point, it starts to
starts to wither
dilute.
up.
Now,
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
my wife is beautiful.
Okay, but at some
If she
point,
asked me to take a bite of the apple and God Himself said don't do it, I'm probably going to
Don't
consider
do it.
taking a bite of
bite
that
of
apple.
that apple. Yeah.
And this is from the copy,
Come on
Right.
now.
Yeah.
Did you
not
preach?
from the.
Not
Yeah.
from the original. huh?
Preach.
All right, all right.
Preach.
Absolutely.
All
Look, I just
right
got to say
then.
this right quick. I
Go
promise
ahead.
it'll be literally
No,
2
go ahead.
seconds. And don't lose your thought. I feel you about to say something. One thing I learned in multiple versions with the story of Adam and Eve is purpose.
Yes.
Right? And understanding what to do with the energy and the knowledge that you obtain. So one thing as Adam could have and should have done was learn how to, in a proper way, manipulate his wife's new found knowledge. His responsibility was to give everybody order, right? But he didn't take that same role when he found out that she knew what the new she
All right,
was
watch
talking
this.
about. You know, I'm sorry, I got a problem. But when she learned this new
Yes.
knowledge,
Yes.
he should have been the man like, yo, all right, I feel you got this. Chill out. Here's what we're going to do with this new stuff. You know what I'm saying? But instead, we can say he panicked, right? And God was like, what you doing? He was like, I don't know what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? But he, at the point, I look at this like this too. Same thing kind of go back to every scenario. Once you learn who you are, you have to understand what to do with the new power that you have. If you don't know what to do with the power that you have, you're going to mess it up.
Yeah.
People, it's like getting a whole lot of money.
Oh
You're going
my
to mess it
God.
up.
You're saying something that, and I know this is from a man's perspective, but you're saying something that's so true in everything that you
Right.
do. It's kind of like when the sound went out today, we're having, and I saw my team. They were really excited. We got it up and going, and I saw them when it came down again, and they were really disappointed, dejected. So I stepped away, and one of the things that I was sharing with them in there, you can't get caught up in the moment. You still have to, things are going to happen that's out of your control. I had a responsibility as a leader to step up, keep this thing going in here, but also take care of my team. And so and communicate to my team how important they are and how valuable, and we're going to get through this. And that's what Adam had, and men have a responsibility with their mate. When they change and they're going through these changes, as things break down, they have a responsibility to come back and communicate to their mate, we're going to get through this.
But the thing is, I don't know a man alive that won an argument with his woman.
Ooh.
And I have a feeling that Adam didn't have a chance when Eve, a bit of the forbidden fruit. Let me finish. Let me finish here. I got a feeling that he when she started talking, he had to listen.
But how do you know that she was talking? See,
we going into our instinct and our sanctified imagination.
You have to break away from your instinct.
Sanctified imagination.
Okay, so your instinct sometimes is telling you.
See there? That's what I was just talking about right there. You see, I'm losing it. I'm losing it. It's right there.
Can I share something for a second?
Yeah, come on.
I'm not sure what transpired, but I do know the responsibility fell on Adam to communicate and to be a leader. Yes. And I think sometimes what men will do is that we will not step up to that responsibility out of fear, out of fear of rejection or fear of the moment or fear of what she may feel about me in this particular time. And one thing I've learned about women and being in relationships is that a woman can be upset with you and that's fine. She can get over that. But if she loses respect for you, that's a different story. And so losing respect means that you don't step up to responsibility. You don't govern the household correctly. You don't govern yourself correctly. You know what I mean? You don't lead appropriately. And so that is something you can't. It's hard to come back from that.
I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah.
But on another note, I'm gonna bring this full circle back to where we started from with domestic violence and divorce. That too often in the relationship, that the man, like I was saying earlier, you're not gonna win an argument or debate or conversation with your woman. And so often when that man feel like, and I'm trying to help somebody, often when that man is feeling like he's not the one being heard, he turns this angry person and begin to do the violent things because he's not being heard, because the woman is still doing this and he can't hear nothing now. And so all he do is black out. And next thing you know is domestic violence or divorce come up.
But I think that's, to me, and I'm the only lady sitting here so I can say it, I think sometimes that's an excuse. Because if a man is truly in control of his emotions, if a man is truly in control of who he is, he shouldn't be. There should be nothing that should take him out of character. So there are still things that he has to check. I'm not debating that at all with you. Okay. I'm just speaking the facts of what's taking place today. So that's
there are too many men out there right now going through divorces and going through domestic violence and all this kind of stuff. You hear about it every day on the news. It's something going on.
It's living an undisciplined life.
Yes.
Like there's a verse in Hebrews chapter 12 that says that no discipline seems pleasant in the moment, right? And so, but it goes on to say, but it yields peace and righteousness. And you said, alluded to earlier, like as men, we just want peace. We want peace in our household. We don't want a lot of arguing.
Right.
But what we don't understand is that the way through peace. Is to suffer at times.
Yes.
And so you have to go through the hard things, the difficult moments that you may not like the way she's talking to you or communicating to you or saying this, that, and the other. But how are you going to navigate that moment so that you can have peace? And the idea is that, man, I may not want to discipline myself or control my urges or control this and the other. But guess what it yields? It yields a peaceful home, a peaceful spirit, a peaceful life, a peaceful wife. And so then it also yields righteousness. And so it says, okay, man, what is righteousness? Right living. So that means when I live my life, people can look at my life and say, you know what? You have a good character. You do the right things. You have a good reputation. Why? Because I had a pattern of disciplining myself. Therefore, now people can say about me, you have a peaceful life and you do the right things. And that speaks volume of a man, you know, because you took the time to discipline yourself.
Yeah.
So not just let yourself
finding peace in the midst of the struggle.
A wise man told me
What did he say?
Marriage counseling before we got married. You can be married or you can be right. Can't be both.
Can't be both.
And what we laugh
Come on,
at
make
it,
my
but-
point clear.
but when you talk about you know the argument, and I know you were being facetious when you were saying that I don't know a man who's ever won an argument. The challenge is not going into a disagreement
Trying to win.
desiring to be right. The desire should be to live in peace with the one you are married to get to a desired end.
solution.
Right. So if the
Resolve.
if the disagreement is on how we should parent or what time you should come home or what bills need to be paid, okay. You have a perspective, I have a perspective. How can we find middle ground in a sense? And I am not, what's the word?
Dictating.
I'm not the
that's it right
dictator in
there.
this situation.
Right.
It's because in essence, it is going to ultimately fall on my shoulders if things don't go right, because that's how the world is going to perceive it. And ultimately that's how God is going to look at this. But I have someone here who is created, designed, and purposed to help. So she has a valid perspective. She's going to see things differently and probably more practically than I would. So why not work together to try and get to a desired end?
Right.
Because if I'm looking to, because truth be told, if you're with someone who respects you, who appreciates you, and likewise who you love, if you right, they gonna tell you.
They gonna tell you.
Facts.
At
Very
some
much.
point,
You might not get it every Friday.
Yeah.
But at some point in time,
that's
you know
very
what?
true.
You was right.
You was right. Yeah.
One thing I've learned in my new marriage, I'm engaged right now. And I still consider myself to be married because
Hallelujah.
I've committed. The word marriage doesn't mean anything unless you have commitment. So
There you go.
that's my mindset. I have to think a little different. One thing I've learned is this: once I get set in my ways and I'm doing it religiously and continuously, she's going to automatically jump on board.
Yes. Yes.
That is so factual. And I learned that instead of trying to force it, like the whole argument thing, I'll never, I told Nikki I would never argue with you. I would never yell and scream. I'm going to say everything I got to say just like this. I'm going to be very calm, very direct. I'm going to get straight to the point. If you don't like it, I understand. We're going to find a common ground somewhere. And if it doesn't work, it just doesn't work. Okay. But I would never yell and scream. I always say there's two people that's dumb
the
in an
choice.
argument.
That's your choice.
That's your
Henry.
choice. If you want to yell and scream, I'm like, no, go right on ahead. I'm just not going to do it. I've been there before. There's two people that's dumb in the argument. The one that's yelling and the one that's listening. Okay?
Yeah.
So my thing is this. It's like, as a man, I feel like as a person, once you get comfortable with who you are and you're doing that thing, like they know for a fact, I'm getting back into bodybuilding. I'm going back to school. I'm doing everything I'm doing. They're like, that's just who he is. That's what he do. We support it, and that's it. Don't get in my way. That's it.
Because you're good in your skin.
Yeah, and so now what's happening? Everybody is complying, not me dictating, saying you do this. It's like no, that's just what he does, and that's just totally fine.
You're talking
Man,
about coming into a relationship.
Yeah.
But what about that individual that is already in the
check it out.
relationship?
It's the same thing. We can use all the stories of Jesus in the Bible and everything else, right? Check it out. Because even in the midst of the storm, you say, peace be still. It's like, man, just stand up and say who you are. I am who I am.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
And once you say that, the storm is going to chill out. And if you can't be comfortable in the storm, you got the boat, bro.
Because
That's it.
what I'm hearing you guys say, and I'm hearing it on all ends, and I think it's each one of you all have a good point, but the most powerful thing that I heard that I want to make sure comes through is that you have to be good with you.
Facts.
Yeah.
That's
You
it.
know, a lot of times people are worried about how they are perceived by others. That should matter. If you're good with you, that's how you're gonna walk. That's how people are gonna see you. That's how you're gonna be perceived. So it's about an internal thing. When you're frustrated, when you're angry, when you're coming off attacking someone or being ugly to someone, that's about how you feel about yourself.
Right.
And a lot of times, that, as men, we do, like going back to what you said, we compare ourselves. We're always competing, and then now you not only have to fight the world. It's like, oh man, I feel like those negative thoughts that's going on in my head, my wife or my significant other thinks the same thing about
Yes.
me, and then she may not be thinking any of those
Anything
things about you,
yes.
but you feel that.
But you done brought that mess home now.
Yeah.
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 So you got to be able to communicate with a certain level of strength,
Yes.
that even in your weak moments. I was being a communicator, being a motivational speaker, minister, trying to communicate effectively. Sometimes I don't say things the right way.
Yes.
You know, maybe I didn't pronounce something the right way, or I didn't say it whatever it might be. And my fiance, she's brilliant. She's very smart. So it would behoove me to say, hey, did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Or did I make a mistake here?
Yes.
Or did I do this? Or if she is trying to correct me or trying to say, hey, you know, babe, you should have said this, or that's actually pronounced this
Yes.
way.
Right. Yes.
You know, for me not to say, oh, you know, and to have an attitude of being
Yes.
mean spirited and say,
Yeah,
oh
you
man,
go
thank
trying
you.
to tell me about
you go
it.
trying to
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
is that
yes, yes.
instead, what is my, like going back to AD, what's the solution? The solution
Right.
is I want to be a better communicator.
Right.
I want to be a better speaker. And here she is placed in my life to help me do that.
All right. That's all right.
That's
You know,
actually very good. It's
No
kind of-
pride, no, you know.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't mind, and I'm gonna fall back.
Oh,
like
Lord.
I always.
It's not.
I think back to
He say, "Oh,
starting
Lord."
this radio podcast thing. I think about myself. Had no clue. Didn't know anything about this. Was not a person that would get up and speak and do it. That just wasn't me. Even though in corporate America I can manage anything, but this was something that I was called to do, but I was petrified. And so in my head, I heard all the time, oh, girl, you sound bad. Oh, girl. You know, all these negative thoughts, and I was worried about how people viewed me. And I would call on, if you go back to some of the older shows, I would call, Brother Carter, Brother Carter. I was leaning on him for strength because that was, he's a natural.
Who is not very versed in literature.
But I would lean on him for strength.
You
and
get the
he
point
would-
across.
And he would deliver because I knew that I can trust that source. And sometimes we do put in our heads, and I had a lot of negative thoughts in my head about what I couldn't do. And one day God said to me, but I put you on this platform. Now you're going to have to trust me, and you're going to have to go out there and seek help. So what I started doing is listening to other people, and that had radio shows, that had podcasts. I mean, I live by it now. So, but I said all that to say is that God gave me a man that I can lean on, and so we have to trust the partners that God have put in our life.
I think a lot of times when we are given, or when we are called to do something, you look at the story of Moses, right? When he interacts with the burning bush the first time, and he's given a directive. I want you to go do this. His initial reaction was that of, oh, hold on. Wait a minute. You want me to go back where?
Do what?
And do what?
Yeah.
In front of who?
Ooh, yeah. Yeah.
You sure you got the right person? Let me go get. And that's the natural response for various reasons. Of course, Moses had his reasons.
Challenge our instincts.
Exactly. And that's the natural inclination that we all have when we are given a call that is greater than ourselves. Whether it is with radio podcasts, whether it is with setting people free, whether it is being the first individual to have a healthy marriage, whether it is the individual who is going to challenge the perpetual nature of domestic violence, whatever that is, it's something that is bigger than you, because now once you have done it, you are now the individual that people aspire to be or look up to, right? And I think that is where a lot of the fear comes into place. But once you push past that,
Yes.
you realize that, again, the calling is you're not doing this for you.
Right.
This is something that is going to probably outlive you. It's going to be
Yes.
greater than you.
Yes.
And it's going to have a larger impact because of the actual call itself.
Yes.
So I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back and ask one more question because we're getting close to 10 o'clock.
I thought we was going to have an extension
Yeah.
because,
I think y'all should.
I'm just,
I think y'all should.
we had the technical
We had the
difficulty.
technical
Y'all
difficulty,
go ahead on. Go on, AD.
But see,
'Cause this is a good
but see,
conversation.
you know, at 10:30, y'all be cutting into my drinking time,
look
so
at-
we need to.
Listen,
Hey, we don't. Hey,
You might as well just bring it in here.
might as well.
So look, I want to pose this question here to the panel. Do you find it? Do you find it easier to have a broad conversation with many people versus having an intimate conversation with?
oh, very.
Let my brother talk. He ain't talking.
Yeah, I was like, that's like my territory right there. Like, I love performing on stage for like 10,000,
Yeah.
multiple people, but having open conversation. But man, when you get down to it, the one-on-one, that's the challenge. That's the times where you're expected to be most vulnerable. That's how you let that one person know your most inner layer.
Yeah.
And
I think a majority of men have that same problem. So you're not alone. So, and I brought that question up because I want someone to know that is a challenging type of conversation, that one-on-one with your significant other, or versus just sitting across the table from somebody you're having dinner with, just having that intimate conversation. Right. Why is that so difficult?
For me, it's because our imagination has a tendency to always perceive that the worst is going to happen.
Right.
When we can easily reframe that to saying that there's a possibility for the best thing that could happen, just as much as there's a possibility for the worst that could happen. Anytime when my wife and I were in our infancy and our dating and the beginning of our marriage, I did, honey, we need to talk.
Okay. Those are some words you don't want to hear.
Because I would always play, okay, what did I do? What did I do? And most of the time, the conversation had nothing to do with something that I did. Right. It was hey, we need to have a conversation because we got this travel, or we have to pay this bill, or we have this change is happening, right? Mm-hmm. And it was always, okay, did I do this? Okay, I did. I don't. And that is something that I had to work at changing, not only with my wife, but with just other individuals as well. At work, hey, AD, we need to talk. What did I do? What's going on? Right. Am I still gonna have my job? Those are the conversations that no one wants to step into because one, you have no control over the conversation because you didn't initiate it. Mm-hmm. Two, you are always it's natural for us to say, okay, the worst is going to happen in this conversation, and then it's just a snowball effect from that. Okay, the worst is gonna happen. I'm gonna lose my job. Then my wife's gonna leave me, and then I'm gonna have to find another. Like it's all of that gets wrapped into that initial, hey, we need to talk.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And if we can just shift our perspective into, your boss could be calling you in to give you a promotion. Yeah. He could be calling you in to give you that bonus.
It's naturally reflected as a negative when you hear it.
I personally think, man, again, I coach people all day and every day. That's why I get that mindset, right? That's why I switched from saying life coaching therapy to mindset, because everything, in my opinion, based on my experience and my expertise, is really just mindset. We know where's your mindset at, and based on the habits and things that you're doing. I personally, this is how I got into everything I'm doing now. I think it truly depends on the person's desire to want to be better. Mm-hmm. It's going to determine whether they need a big group or a small group, right? Because let's just say if you're not comfortable with yourself, you may need to start off with a big group of people and talking, get into a big group counseling session or something like that. Go to a motivational speaking thing or something, you know what I'm saying? Because you're not comfortable with the one-on-ones. You're not ready to face yourself 100% just yet. You're not ready for that. I need to be with a bunch of people who messed up just like me.
But you know what I think it's kind of crazy, though, that you can be more comfortable. Psychologically, that just seems just off.
Well, no, it was sad because, like I said, when you're not comfortable with yourself, you need more people to make you feel comfortable. But it's like somebody like myself, I need direct. I need you to sit to me, talk. Hey, Rick, you messing up like this. I'm like, okay. I'm better like that because I need to be better now. I don't need to procrastinate.
So
you know what I mean?
better more with the intimate
Oh man,
conversation.
sit me down.
versus-
If you my friend, if we close and you don't sit me down and talk to me, I'm gonna be mad at you. Don't wait till we get around a bunch of people.
I think it has to do two things. Like you alluded to it too, about number one, being prepared and being willing to accept criticism.
Right.
And I think as men, we can get in spaces where we're the leader, so we don't have to accept so much criticism because we're leading. You know, if I'm in a space to where I'm talking, I'm the communicator, people are listening to me, I'm the voice of authority, then there's not really a lot of feedback. There's not a lot of challenge, pushback. I'm the talent. I'm the person that's here. And so it's comfortable. I don't need to be. I'm not challenged there.
Okay.
And then also, I prepared myself. If I'm the talent, I have a gift, I have something that I do well. Then I prepared myself, and I can go into it fully confident and knowing that this is going to go well in front of thousands of people because I've done it and I rehearsed it over and over in my mind. I know how it's going to go. What makes us uncomfortable sometimes in those one-on-one spaces, especially with our significant other, is that we're not comfortable, we're not prepared, we don't know how this thing is going to happen, what's going to happen.
That's that negative thing
and
that
then
pop up.
You may be challenged, right? You may be called out on something, and if you're not accustomed to taking criticism, constructive criticism, being challenged, if you're not okay with that, if you're not okay with growing and developing and becoming more, then that is going to be uncomfortable,
Right.
Because it's you're placed in a situation where you're not prepared, and being prepared, going back to what you're saying, being prepared, you may not know directly, you may not know exactly what that conversation, all that it entails, but you can be prepared in the sense that you've done the work on yourself and you know how to communicate your feelings effectively. And so now that you're in the conversation, you're in it prepared. You know how to communicate, you know how to address whatever needs to be addressed effectively, and you're not shutting down, you're not being dismissive or any of those things, but and also at the same time you're being willing to accept whatever is coming your way. Is it criticism? Maybe sometimes we just don't, your significant other can be say, hey, AD, you have all these great traits, but if you could just do this, if you could just do that, that little, that form of criticism. Now, then I'm like, okay, great. You think I can be better if I do that? Okay, I'll try. I'll do my best to be able to do that. Those are two things that makes us as men very uncomfortable because I want to be in the places of authority. I don't want to be critiqued. I don't want to be criticized. And I want to be prepared.
If you really think about it, though, you're being critiqued and criticized ever since you was born. And you grow up going into sports and you got your coach that's jumping on your case, criticizing you, critiquing you, making you better. But as we become men, we seem like we don't want to accept that.
Well, most of us, when we are elevated to a certain station, to Robert's point, that's when we don't want it anymore. When we are younger,
say it again.
when we are elevated to a certain station, we don't want, or we don't desire the same critique or feedback that we were getting when we were on the little league or when we were, trying to make it. Exactly. And I think Steven being here, I think his line of work is one of the best ways to really appreciate critique and feedback. When you are singing or you're performing and you're using that specific instrument, if you are supposed to be singing in A flat and you are in C sharp, well, we need to make an adjustment because now you're throwing everybody else off.
Right. I've done that.
But if you don't
turn his mic off,
right. But if you don't get that
in the
critique,
church choir,
right? But if you don't get that critique, it's not right. If Beyonce is going out and she's going through vocal coaching, which I promise you she has one. If that vocal coach is like, okay, well, I'm not going to give you the same feedback that I would give the seventh grader who is going through my same program because you Beyonce. Well, that's not helping Beyonce.
Right.
That's not helping anyone in that position because they're coming to you with the hopes and the aspirations to get better.
Right.
And I need that feedback. I need, if we're talking about sports, I need to watch the film and see my coach say, hey, you did this great, wonderful effort, but you totally missed this situation. Yeah. Or in basketball, like you took this open three, but you had your teammate wide open underneath the goal and we only needed 2 to tie and you missed the 3. Right. So I think getting that critique is important. But again, once you've elevated or been elevated to a certain station, it's very difficult to receive it because your ego starts to perk up.
And I think at any level, you want to be affirmed along with the criticism as
100%.
well. But for the sake of, I got my staff here that need to get out of here because I can't be paying them too long.
It's not working overtime, huh?
yeah. So we're gonna have to wrap this up, gentlemen. And so, anything you'd like to leave the people with, Steve? That any closing remarks or something that you heard on the show that you like to just make that point for the people that's listening out there on Facebook, YouTube, or whatever the case that may be?
Well, I think the underlying thing throughout the day is just the ability to communicate, the ability to communicate your vulnerable self and be who you are. That's the underlying message that I consistently heard through the last 2 hours was just, being open to communicate your feelings. I know culturally men are trying to keep it within.
Right. They're just like that volcano, just holding, and all of a sudden
ends up in violence.
Yes. So we need to stop doing that. All right. What you got there, Robert, closing out on us?
I would just say accept responsibility. The only way we can accept responsibility is if we don't avoid suffering. And I think too many times as people, not just as men, we try to avoid suffering. And there's a verse that says in Psalm 71 that talks about, it was good that I was afflicted that I may learn your ways. And so what I think about that is there a form of suffering that actually leads to satisfaction? Is there a form of despair that actually leads to my development? Form of pain that leads to my progress? And so don't just avoid responsibility because it's scary or that it's suffering. No, they call it growing pains for a reason. Because though it may be painful, you're growing.
All right.
So I would say accept responsibility.
Don't get afraid of when you're in the midst of suffering. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Wow.
Brother AD, what you have in close for the people?
Man, so we're talking about.
I want your shorter version now.
I got you. We're talking about challenging your instincts, and the best way that you can do that is to really question yourself. Scripture says, "In all you're getting understanding." So if you are consistently presented with the same scenario situation, you should be asking yourself, what should I be learning from this? Why is my response always this initially? How can I change that? But again, that's a question that you have to ask yourself. And that's an internal perspective that you have to have once your awareness is where it needs to be. So you can't challenge those instincts if you don't even question why it is you're doing this thing.
Amen.
good.
Thank you for that.
Was that short enough?
Yeah, you did good. You did. I'm proud of you, man. I'm proud of you. So, Ricky, what you have in close for the people?
Man, first of all, you guys are all dope, man. Y'all amazing people, and I love it. And so I'm not going to take up too much of your time. The main thing for me is accept the process of life. Because if you accept the process of life, you understand there has to be some type of destruction before there's construction. No matter what's happening in life, something is going to be tore up in order for it to be built up. And it's the same concept that applies to life, relationships, and everything else. So if you accept the process of life, when destruction happens, you automatically know what has to happen on the backside. There has to be some type of construction. But you got to be willing to understand yourself to go through the process of constructing your
these
life.
brothers are profound on this show. God dog it, well, they come up with some stuff out there. What you got there, host for the show?
I have to
co-host. You're the co-host in the day.
I like to
You know what? I want to say that I'm so proud of you for doing what you did today. You actually allowed me to host the show today, man. And that's the first time. So I need
Amen.
to get this.
See, something had to look. That just proved my point. Something has to be broken, right?
So petty.
He's communicating his feelings.
Something had to be broken.
Christian people over there clapping their hands. I tell you.
I acknowledge it.
I did. I have to say, I'm always talking about the shows being great, but I have to honestly say this has been it's been the best not
Male's
the
perspective
best
show.
Male's perspective show.
Not the best show, just the male's
Male's
perspective.
And I want to
Yeah,
give you
because
guys.
she always, if you was on earlier, she always like, I'm only gonna jump in if they not being real and they ain't gonna talk about what
Yes.
real feeling. Then I
Yeah.
gotta get them to talk.
But I want to say, you guys knocked it out of the park. I think from a woman's perspective, just sitting back and hearing you guys be so open, be so vulnerable, and just be real in your feelings in the moment. I know that people have been healed. I know that people are feeling better about themselves. Whether it's going to happen today or it's going to happen tomorrow, change is going to happen. So it started with you guys. Thank you so much for being on the show. And baby,
Amen,
you did a hell of a job.
All right, God bless you.
Right then.
So, all right. In close, first and foremost, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for being on the show on the panel today. Y'all are outstanding. Y'all were great on the show. I wish we had the visual to go with this, but I apologize for that in advance.
It wasn't your fault.
Wasn't you?
Yeah, but
They'll be back on.
yeah.
There you go.
Higher quality than the street.
Okay. All right. We do want to have you guys back on the show again soon and very soon. All right. The right way. And so in closing, talking about love and marriage and domestic violence and divorce and all these different things that take place, I want to end with a quote from Franklin Covey. I believe his name is The 7 Habits of Effective Communication, I believe it is. And one of the quotes he have in that book is, he says, "Seek ye first to understand, then be understood." If you want to have a lasting relationship with your significant other, learn how to hear
That's good.
versus being heard. Seek first to understand, then be understood. God bless you. We love you. And we see you next week on the Love and Victory Show from 8 to 10. Amen.
Amen. We love you.